30 minutes before Chris Wyatt's show. Chris Wyatt's show is going to start in about 30 minutes, which will be 10 a.m. U.S. Central Time, 11 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time, and then 6 p.m. South Africa time. But I'm streaming at the moment, and props thanks to all who have tuned in and are going to watch it. I'm going to talk about my country a little bit today, the United States of America, and why I'm really proud of the country. Okay, I believe that America has always been great, and let me explain this. Okay, when the United States broke away from Great Britain because Great Britain was imposing what we call taxation without representation, what Britain did not treat the U.S. colonies that bad. The bottom line is that Britain was doing this, and the United States did not have any representation of Parliament. All we basically had was the House of Burgesses, which came and addressed our grievance to King George III. And King George III did not have mistresses. He was faithful to his wife, and a lot of kings weren't at that time, but he was. He also didn't have too much luxurious possessions. He had a 24-foot by 13-foot couch. But at the same time, he ruled with an iron fist. He also wouldn't listen to another person's viewpoint. And rumors were, according to British historian Paul Johnson, who wrote a fascinating book on George Washington, Paul Johnson said that King George III did not learn how to read and write till he was about 11 or 12 years old, and throughout his life, he kind of still wrote with a childish flair to it, or in a childish manner. So he basically thought America must be taught to obey. Well, the United States broke away via the Declaration of Independence, the United Colonies. And George Washington, after the United States won the Revolutionary War, George Washington became president, and he had immense popularity. He could have been crowned king, but George Washington chose not to. George Washington chose not to be king, and he stepped down after 2 terms. And Americans have been following that model ever since in regards to a U.S. president. And it was followed when John Adams and Thomas Jefferson ran against each other. Thomas Jefferson, there was a dispute of counted ballots, and John Adams refused to count ballots, but Thomas Jefferson said, I'm not going to let the welfare of the country come after my own personal ambition. So he left. There was no gunfires, no coup, no nothing, and Jefferson came back 4 years later and won the election. And that's one of many reasons why I love America. And that's stuff that's largely not taught in history books. And for my South African viewers, I've heard that South Africans just basically get nothing but a negative view of America in their history books when they're taught about America, that it's a racist, anti-colonial place, and that America has always done a lot of things wrong, and that's not true. America has done a lot more right than wrong. Like, the example, the War of 1812, the reason that the war was started, and yes, the UK at the time had treated blacks and Native Americans better than the United States had, I'm not going to lie, but the reason that the war was started and the reason many blacks chose to fight for the United States, aside from the United States being their country, was because of that the UK, several years before the War of 1812, the United States was trading with Britain and France and chose to maintain neutrality in the British-French War when Britain was warring with Napoleon. But the British ships started kidnapping U.S. sailors and conscripting them into British service, and the UK, the Royal Navy, were treating their sailors way worse than the U.S. Navy. Now, yes, Britain had treated the Native Americans better, and that's why Tecumseh formed a Native American coalition to side with the British over the Americans. That is absolutely true. And the Cherokee Indians who sided with the Americans in the War of 1812, President Andrew Jackson basically broke the promises he gave to them and sent them on the Trail of Tears. America is not innocent. They've done wrong things as well, and that's what I mentioned. And there was in one of the battles that the Creeks, well, the Upper Creeks were on the The British side, the Lower Creeks were on the American side, and the Cherokee were on the American side, and there were some Cherokee warriors that saved Andrew Jackson's life, and they said they regretted it because he paid them back by sending him away to Oklahoma on the Trail of Tears. So that happened. But where it started was Britain were kidnapping U.S. sailors, and they were conscripting them into British service. And that's why many African Americans, in spite of the British treating them better overall at the time, they chose to fight for the United States. And that particularly rings true in the Battle of New Orleans in the War of 1812. So that's what many South Africans are not taught in the history books about the United States. And yes, compared to the Boer War, the British imperialism that the United States to make amends with Britain and become a strong ally with Britain and have a special relationship. But what I really like about South Africa, and one reason Prime Minister Jan Smuts has such a high approval rating in England and the United States, what little Americans know about him, we really like Jan Smuts, is because he made amends with England less than 10 years after the British put the Afrikaners in concentration camps. He made amends with them about 8 years after that and created the Union of South Africa in such a short amount of time. And that really, because the United States did the same thing, but one, the British imperialism we experienced was way minor, way less worse than what Afrikaners experienced, is what really fascinates a lot of us about Jan Smuts. So, props to the one like here, props to the 4 people who have tuned in. Another thing that I'm going to talk about is World War II. I've talked about how South Africans did very good in World War II, and but the United States had the main industry in World War II, and you may be taught because the Communist Party rules a lot of South Africa's education that the Soviets won World War II, and the Soviets did a lot of great things in World War II. They helped keep the Germans at bay where Germany was trying to fight war on 2 fronts. But when D-Day happened, Stalin petitioned the UK and the USA, said, we can't hold out much longer. You guys are going to have to open up an invasion of Western Europe so you can distract German forces because they can't hold out much longer. That's number 1. Number 2, the U.S. gave the Soviets a lot of equipment, boots, jeeps, airplane parts, rifles, through the Lend-Lease program, and it was a generous program that the United States had with the Soviet Union. And so the Lend-Lease program really helped the Soviet Union win World War II. And I assume that many of you guys in South Africa are not taught that in South African history textbooks. Also, the Korean War, South Africa did amazing things, but the United States sent 50% of the ground forces, 93% of the air forces, and 86% of the naval forces to help keep North Korea from invading South Korea. And South Korea is a prosperous nation right now. It has a per capita income of $26,000 US dollars, one of the highest in the world. They have K-pop, they have Korean movies, and Korean culture has become a cool thing around the world largely because America helped liberate South Korea from communism. And then you look at North Korea, and that's arguably one of the poorest, if not the poorest nation on earth. So that you guys are not taught that about America, and America largely trained the South African Air Force, and they supplied the South African Air Force with the planes. Now, with that being said, America was ignorant to what was going on in South Africa. They thought all the pilots were going to be black, so they had an African-American U.S. Army band meet them at the shipyard, but they were shocked when they saw that the pilots were white South Africans. I guess they weren't sure that white Africans had existed. And they kind of treated the South African Air Force with contempt and with disrespect at first, but then S. Van Breda Theron, no kin to Charlize Theron as far as I know, he hopped in one of the American P-51 Mustangs and started flying it really well and doing acrobatic stunts. And the Americans started treating the South Africans with more respect after that. Also, this one guy I talked to on Facebook was a Korean War veteran. He worked sea rescue, and they were always relieved when the South African pilots flew cover over them. They felt safe and protected. And they said they'll never forget all this, the bravery of the South African pilots. Also, U.S. Army ground forces, who got to know some of the South African pilots, have said some of the same things. So thumbs up to South Africa for that. One thing I did want to discuss, the Uganda election. Yoweri Museveni won with 58% of the vote, but I believe that is fraudulent. I believe Yoweri Museveni has done a good job overall running the country, but he's a tyrant and he's a dictator. He has combated Islamic terrorism in Somalia. He has reduced the AIDS crisis, but the House of Bobby Wine is under siege right now. The House of Bobby Wine is under siege right now. It's surrounded by police and military forces, and my question is, if the election has not been rigged, then why is Bobby Wine's house, why is Bobby Wine under house arrest, and why are the military and police threatening to take him to prison right now if the election has not been rigged? The fact is, the election has been rigged. Yoweri Museveni's been in power since 1986. I was born in 1986, so I really have not known any other ruler of Uganda except for Yoweri Museveni. But the funny thing is, social media, Facebook and Twitter have banned all pro-Yoweri Museveni groups, and they've condemned Yoweri Museveni for his censorship. Never mind that Twitter and Facebook have been censoring Trump like crazy. Amazon to a certain degree too. They banned the conservative outlet, which has been an alternative to Twitter, called Parler. They banned Parler, but then they're allowing a shirt to be sold that's calling basically for death to Trump. And props to Breitbart for reporting that. And that just shows the hypocrisy of all these technocrats, and it shows the hypocrisy in social media. Props to the 4 people who have tuned in. Props for the likes. If you guys want to, start up the chat. What do you guys want to chat about? You guys want to comment on what I've said about America and what I've said about Uganda and what I've said about all these other things? I was hoping that Bobby Wine would win it to bring democracy to Uganda. Unfortunately, because of the COVID and everything that has happened, the world has just unfortunately just looked away and just wasn't paying much attention to the Ugandan elections. And, Museveni still has enjoyed widespread popularity in spite of his tyrannical fascism, but I still think the election was rigged. I mean, he's got a lot of widespread popularity because he hadn't done a bad job running the nation of Uganda, but he's been a dictator, and he's changed the constitution twice, and this is according to Chris Watt's latest videos on the Ugandan elections. I recommend that you guys do go check it out and check out Chris Watt's channel. Speaking of, you guys are going to be stuck in South Africa for a while. A lot of air travel to and from South Africa has been banned. Airlines like Emirates Airlines, KLM, Lufthansa, they all have stopped flights to South Africa, and a lot of South African English teachers in South Korea right now are stuck because many of them have flown via Emirates Airlines. They fly out of South Africa via Emirates Airlines, and then they go to UAE, and then they change their flight in UAE, and then they fly into South Korea. So you guys are pretty much going to be stuck in South Africa because a lot of the South African English teachers in South Korea are stuck in South Korea, and they cannot go home because of the new COVID strain that has been found in South Africa, and because the ANC has done a poor job. This lockdown has not been effective, and I've discussed it in previous streams and previous videos why this lockdown has not been effective. So, and Chris White did a video on that as well. The airlines are not flying to and from South Africa. KLM suspended flights, Emirates Airlines, and Lufthansa, and probably several other airlines are going to follow suit because of that. And that's all thanks to, I believe, Fikile Mbalula for not regulating the taxi industry during this pandemic and meeting with the taxi industry not wearing a mask. That's what I firmly believe, and it's just a mess right now. But at the same time, not you guys, not most of my viewers and subscribers, but South Africans keep electing the ANC every 4 years, every 4 to 5 years. The ANC keeps getting elected. Kylie Dervin says most South Africans are broke anyway to travel Job losses are of effort proportion. Yes, there are rumors that the unemployment rate is not just 50%, but actually over 50%, that the ANC is just saying 50% to make themselves halfway look good, but the unemployment rate might be into the 60s right now, might be in the 60 percentiles. And many businesses have been forced to close, not just due to the COVID, but due to the proportional crime rates and the South African police services not responding properly. And then a lot of polices have to pay, not police, a lot of businesses have to pay a fortune to private security companies to get them to guard the business. So then the business then loses a lot of revenue that way, because a lot of the money ends up in the hands of private security companies, because they have to pay them a fortune to guard their business, because break-ins are common, and break-ins have been one of the crimes that have actually increased during this pandemic because of people losing their jobs. Plain and simple, people losing their jobs and people not being able to feed their families. And then the ANC has not gotten hardly any of the stimulus check or any bailouts for the average South African. They don't have a plan in place for it. You know, I'm an American and I've already gotten 2 stimulus checks from my government, but and the plan has been smooth, and other Americans have as well. And the ANC, and then have you guys gotten stimulus checks from the ANC? I highly doubt that you guys have. It doesn't seem like that they have any stimulus plan in place to do something like that. I want to ask you guys, try to get the chat stirred up. Have you guys gotten any government aid or any stimulus aid from the ANC due to the since the COVID pandemic? Have you guys gotten any sort of help or assistance from the government? And then on top of that, the ANC still cozies up to China. They cozy up to China, and the virus originated in China. And right now, the Chinese media can't even hide this. The COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, Khalid Irvin says, government have no money, not received a cent. Somewhat, I disagree with you on. I think they have the money. I think they embezzle it, and they keep it for themselves. And they buy these Ferraris and buy these Bentleys, and they go travel the world in their private jets, or they use South African Airways for their own expense, like Ramaphosa had 11 of his best friends take a regular chartered plane throughout Africa, which did happen, by the way. The government owns South African Airways, which has basically bankrupted it. And those politicians use those airplanes for their own personal use, which is a drain on fuel, by the way. And then it just increases the fuel cost for the average South African customer, the average South African traveler. And Khalid Irvin says, agree. I agree as well. It's just a mess. It's just a cluster. Excuse my language, but it's a clusterfuck. Which is basically what goes on. I think what South Africa needs to do, they trade a lot with Botswana. They need to look at Botswana and see the model that Botswana has, with all the free market entities, with the lack of political corruption, with the lack of racial tensions. And Botswana has been a model not just for South Africa, but for all of Africa. But we'll go to Namibia for a minute. Hage Geingob criticized white South Africans for taking advantage of him by speaking out against the SWAPO government, speaking out against his leadership. I know this for a fact. White Namibians stayed out of politics because they were grateful that SWAPO didn't take their businesses away. They were grateful that SWAPO let them live their own lives. The majority of white Namibians stood away from politics as a matter of being grateful and keeping the country stable. They did not get involved in politics until Hage Geingob did such a bad job running the country that their service deliveries were horrible. The electricity was going out. They weren't getting running water, and they weren't able to live their daily lives due to SWAPO's ineptness. So then they started backing the opposition because their livelihood started being threatened, not for SWAPO's racism. That had nothing to do with it. Hey, Sharon Eagle says, hi there, peeps. What's up, Sharon? SWAPO was threatening the white Namibians' livelihood because of their incompetence. So they went and backed a party that promised better service deliveries, and they went and backed a political party that promised them a better economy. Well, Hage Geingob got upset and accused many white Namibians of being racist, but they weren't being racist. They were just trying to live the best daily life that they could for their families, and they felt like being politically involved was just the only option that they had. That's what that was all about. And that is what happened. And then also, I really look, I do not, most of small businesses are closing down. That is absolutely true, for numerous reasons. One, even though they can't function completely during the COVID, they have to pay the private security companies full price because break-ins are increasing at an alarming rate because people, the average South African, can't feed their families. And the government embezzles money, so there's no stimulus checks coming to the average South African. Now, I'm not excusing somebody to break into a business, but that's just the reality of the dilemma that people are facing, unfortunately. But on Namibia, your neighbors, and you guys we all need to know about Namibia. They're neighbors to South Africa, and I've always wanted to go to Namibia. Germany should not compensate Namibia for the massacre of the Herero and the Nama tribes. Okay, first of all, when Germany set up missions and missionaries and trade centers, the Herero and the Nama never seen Germans before, probably never saw white people before, so they got a little bit scared, but the Herero and the Nama fired the first shots, and they went and massacred women, children, didn't leave anybody alive. Okay? And the Germans excessively retaliated and did the same thing, and the Herero and the Nama were almost extinct because of the Germans' excessive retaliation. However, the Herero and the Nama fired the first shots, number one. Second of all, that was over 100 years ago, and no German is alive that has done that is alive. Okay? These are second, third, and fourth generations in Namibia, and Germany sends more foreign aid to Namibia than any other country. German tourists visit Namibia all the time, and they promote people to visit Namibia, which booms Namibia's tourist economy. Reparations for this are just outright nonsense. Now, should Germany recognize that it was a genocide? I would say so, and I think Germany needs to do more of an effort of that. But Germany should not have to compensate Namibia for this. And also, it's the Namibian government that's negotiating this, not the actual Herero and Nama tribes. Okay, hang on one second. Okay, Sharon Nagel says, I've learned that some of the business had a time limit to pay the money funded back with interest. It wouldn't shock me. And I'm against that mainly because the South African government cozies up to China and the virus originated in China. They needed to follow what the Zambian government did. The Zambian government said, we need time to pay back these loans and we're not going to pay them back for the time being. And China did give Zambia a lot of money. But Zambia has, like all countries, have been affected bad for the COVID. The head of the Zambian CIA died due to the COVID-19. And they said, you guys caused this virus. We can't pay these loans back at the moment because of what you caused. And that's when the U.S. stepped in and gave Zambia a lot of aid, and rightfully so. Okay, and then, so yeah, Sharon, I mean, I know I kind of talked more about the government on business, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's going on in South Africa with the small businesses. But Zargo says, Brett, you made her the morning shot hosted by Roman Kabanak as one of the founding members of the capitalist ZACP party. Thanks for all the history. Keep them coming. Thank you very much, Footsarko. Yes, I do like Roman Kabanak. I've seen him on Chris White and on Ronaldo's show. I really like Roman Kabanak, but I follow Chris's channel, I follow Ronaldo's channel, I follow several South Korean YouTubers. I haven't seen too many of Roman's shows, unfortunately, because I just follow so many other channels. It's just hard to keep up with all of them. And I'm sorry if I interfered with Roman's stream. That's the last thing that I wanted to do. But yeah, I need to do that. Now, with that being said, as angry as I am with the South African government, I think Cape Independence is a bad idea. I'm gonna really say that. I think it's a bad idea. The Cape Party, it's going to take forever to build a standing army. And as bad as inept as the South African military is right now, they can come in and absorb the Cape Province. They are not going to let the Cape Province go quiet. I think that breaking away from them at the moment is just going to cause civil war. And take it from me, many Western governments are still brainwashed by the ANC, like Lana Marks, who is an inept ambassador for the U.S., to South Africa. They are not going to be coming to your aid, particularly when Joe Biden becomes president of the United States. And you guys are going to get massacred. Do I think the Cape Independence Party is racist? No. They probably have more colored people in their party than white people, and there are some blacks that are part of the Cape Independence Party as well. I don't think you guys are racist. I just think that it's not going to be a wise move. Take it from me. I'm from Mississippi. My home state was the second state to secede from the Union behind South Carolina, and Mississippi's paying for that. Is paying for that left and right. We still are. And it was a dumb move on our part because the North had 91% of the industry. The South had only 9% of the industry. The Southern soldiers were tough and better fighters, and they lasted for 4 years. There was a large military tradition in the South, but at the same time, there was really no way the South could have won the war. We were outnumbered 3-1, and we seceded over a bad cause. Slavery should have never happened. But actually, where I grew up, Vicksburg, Mississippi, the delegates there voted against secession because they traded a lot with the North, and they were not a farming economy in Vicksburg. They were a commercial economy. But at the end of the day, they were Mississippians first and Americans second, so when the secession happened, they stayed loyal to their state. But it was just bad on all proportions. And I think the same thing's going to happen to the Cape if the Cape tries to the Western Cape tries to break away from the rest of South Africa. And Butsarko says he agrees. And thank you, Butsarko. Thank you very much. Look, I have 899 subscribers. Almost to 900. So if you guys know anybody who may be interested in my content or my channel, please encourage them to subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers as soon as possible, but I'm not trying to go on other people's YouTube channels or Telegram groups to promote my channel as best I can, because I want to try to do this myself and not try to disturb them if possible. So please, if you guys know anybody who may be interested in my content, please tell them to subscribe. Please tell them to subscribe. Still got 2 people on the channel. I'm gonna go about 3 more minutes. Props to you guys who have tuned in. Now it seems like I've got 3 people tuned in. So like I said, props to you guys who have tuned in. When the COVID gets better, I've always promoted South Korea on the channel, but I encourage you guys to go to the War Memorial in Seoul. Because they have a really good section dedicated to the South African Air Force in the Korean War. And when you guys go to one part of the wall, right before you go inside, there's a wall that lists all the countries of all the people from all the countries that died in the Korean War, and they have a list of the 34 South African airmen that died in the Korean War. And I recommend that you guys go. It's definitely worth a once in a lifetime visit if you guys can afford. But I know, due to the economy in South Africa, and the COVID crisis, many South Africans are broke. Only if you got the money, or only if you get a job in South Korea teaching English, I recommend that you guys go visit it. It's definitely worth the experience, and you'll be proud of your country seeing that, and it's a part of your country's history that's largely not taught in textbooks, and that's one reason I promote it. Me and my friend Jade Dones, Jade is his first name, his last name is Dones. We did a video of South Africa in the Korean War, and I'm going to show it. I'm going to post the link to here, so just please bear with me. And we did a link over on South Africa in the Korean War. We did a YouTube video on his channel, not mine. That's why I'm posting it right here. And just hang on one second. I'm going to copy the link and post it on my channel on this live stream. And if you guys check it out, and a lot of his stuff's on the Philippines, but I highly recommend that you guys do check out this video. And we also did a video on the Philippines as well as New Zealand in the Korean War. There's the link. I recommend that you guys do check it out. But we also did a video on the Philippines and on New Zealand in the Korean War. And the video we did on the Philippines in the Korean War has reached almost 200,000 views. So let me go ahead and post it there. And actually, because there's a lot of anti-China sentiment in South Africa right now, that people that are anti-ANC, the Philippines in the Battle of Yeldong, there were only 1,400 Filipino soldiers against 40,000 Chinese soldiers, and the Filipino soldiers won that battle. Only 24 Filipino soldiers lost their lives, and over 7,500 Chinese soldiers lost their lives. So I'm going to post that link right here as well onto this live stream. So just hang on 1 second. Hang on. There you guys go. Sorry about that. Collie there said, thanks, we'll check it out. Much appreciated. Like I said, much appreciated. It offers good history content. And what the Filipino soldiers do, they pride themselves in never becoming anti-white. When they got to Korea, because they had brown skin, they were denied winter clothing. But at the same time, they realized what General MacArthur had said: give me 10,000 Filipinos and I shall conquer the world. And the Filipino soldiers, because they were so tough and tenacious, they eventually got their winter clothing. And the Filipino soldiers had prided themselves. They said, we saw good white people, we saw bad white people. Despite the discrimination we did receive, we never became anti-white. We remembered the white people that helped us, along with the white people that hated us. And that's something that I believe that the ANC and the EFF need to learn. And that's something that they need to learn. I highly doubt they're ever going to learn it, because a lot of them are just so filled with bigotry and hatred. You can't teach somebody with such a hard heart how to love and forgive, unfortunately. And that particularly rings true with Julius Malema. So it says, I just checked the channel. It says I got now 900 subscribers. Thank you guys so much, and thanks for listening. Chris White's stream is about to start, so I'm signing out. I recommend that you guys go over to Chris White's stream. Love you guys. God bless you guys. And hope everybody's doing well. Take care. God bless. And bye-bye. Bye-bye.